The Greco-Italian, also called Greek-Italian War, Italian campaign in Greece and the War of 1940 took place between Kingdom of Italy under the dictatorship of Benito Mussolini and Kingdom of Greece ruled by Ioannis Metaxas, which happened between October 28, 1940 and April 23, 1941. This local war began the Balkans campaign of the Second World War between the Axis and Allies, eventually turned into the Battle of Greece, with the involvement of Great Britain and Germany. In 1919, after the end of the First World War, Benito Mussolini, originally a revolutionary socialist and a newspaper journalist, forged Italy's violent paramilitary fascist movement and in 1922 declared himself Prime Minister because of the massive support he got. In 1925, he gained total control over the country and declared himself as dictator with the nickname Il Duce. In the late 1920s, he began his idea of Spazio Vitale, or vital space if you are not Italian, an outlet for its surplus population, and that it would be the best interest of other countries to aid an expansion of Imperial Italy. The regime wanted total hegemony in the Mediterranean Danubian Balkan region, and Mussolini imagined the conquest of an empire stretching from the Strait of Gibraltar to the Strait of Hormuz. The fascist regime wanted to establish protectorates in countries like Albania, Romania, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Hungary, Austria, Greece and Spain, which laid under Italian influence. In 1935, Italy invaded Ethiopia, beginning the Second Italo-Ethiopian War to expand its empire. UK and France knew their empires are under an Italian imperialist threat, and the League of Nations imposed sanctions on the fascist state. In 1936, the Spanish Civil War began between the Republicans and the Nationalists ruled by Francisco Franco, who was supported by Italy and Germany. This marked the beginning of Italo-German relationship. In 1938, the Italian army made plans to invade Albania, which began on April 7, 1939, and in 3 days it was under Italian protectorate, which was a territory for its living space. A plan to invade Yugoslavia was drawn, but postponed due to opposition from Nazi Germany and lack of Italian army transport. In 1912, Italy had captured the Greek population on their occupied islands of Dodecanese in the Aegean Sea. After the Italo-Turkish War, which was won by Italy, it was under Italian occupation until 1919, when it was ceded to the Greeks. When they found out about the Anatolian lands, which were promised to Greece because of their aid in the First World War, the Italian delegation withdrew from the conference for several months. Italy also occupied some lands in Anatolia, and the Greek-occupied territory was under the threat of the Italians. In 1922, the Greco-Turkish War began after the Greek troops marched deeply in Anatolia. The Turkish troops defeated the Greek and Italian influence and recovered their lost territory. In 1923, Benito Mussolini used the excuse that a general was killed at the Albanian-Greek border, and the Corfu Island, the most important in the Ionian Sea, was bombed by the Italian Air Force. After their defeat in Anatolia, Greece signed Treaty of Lausanne in 1923 ended their megali idea. Their territorial claims in northern Epirus, Italian-ruled Dodecanese and Cyprus remained open but inactive in the view of the country's weakness and isolation. The main threat to the Greeks were their northern neighbour, Tsardom of Bulgaria, who still had claims on the Greek Thrace. The years after 1923 marked the diplomatic isolation of Greece, who still had many unresolved disputes with their neighbours. From 1925 to 1926, the Greek general Theodoros Pangalos wanted to revise the Treaty of Lausanne by a war with Turkey. He also wanted closer relationship with Mussolini's government, but nothing happened. After the fall of Pangalos and the restoration of relative political stability in 1926, some efforts to have a diplomatic relation with their neighbours failed. In that period, they moved closer to the British Empire and also wanted to renew their relation with Italy by signing a trade pact in November of 1926. The Italian-Greek rapprochement had a positive impact on the Romanian-Greek relationship and on the Turkish-Greek relationship. This relationship culminated with the signing of the Treaty of Friendship on September 23, 1928, which Mussolini exploited to diplomatically isolate Yugoslavia from the Balkan countries. And Mussolini guaranteed Greek sovereignty on Macedonia and to defend it in a case of a war with Yugoslavia. During the late 1920s and early 1930s, sought diplomatically to create an Italian-dominated Balkan bloc that would link Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, and Hungary. Greece countered the policies with an annual Balkan conference with its neighbours to study questions of common economic interests. The aim was to create a regional union. It increased the diplomatic relatio, and all kinds of revisionism was countered. The Italo-Greek Treaty of Friendship ended the Greek isolation and led to a series of bilateral alliances, most notably Greek-Turkish Friendship of 1930. This process culminated in the signature of the Balkan Pact between Greece, Romania, Yugoslavia, and Turkey to counter the Bulgarian revisionism. In 1935, the Second Italo-Ethiopian War marked the renewal of Italy's expansion policy and began a period where Greece increasingly sought a firm British commitment for its security. Great Britain offered guarantees to Greece, Turkey and Yugoslavia for the duration of the Ethiopian crisis. It was unwilling to commit itself further so as to avoid limiting its freedom of manoeuvre vis Italy. Furthermore, with the British-backed restoration of the monarchy in Greece putting the Anglophile King George II on the throne, Britain secured its influence in Greece. This did not change even after the establishment of the dictatorial 4th of August regime of Ioannis Metaxas in 1936. Although imitating the Italian fascist regime in ideology and outward appearance, the regime lacked a mass popular base, and its main pillar was the king. Greek foreign policy thus remained aligned with that of Britain, despite the parallel ever-going economic penetration of Nazi Germany. Metaxas himself, although an ardent Germanophile in World War I, followed this line, and after the Munich Agreement it suggested a British-Greek alliance, but in case of an Italo-English war, Greece would also be dragged in war. On February 4, 1939, Mussolini addressed the fascist Grand Council of Foreign Policy that Italy was imprisoned by France and UK, and from his speeches he declared that Greece was a vital enemy of Italy's expansionism. Metaxas wrote in his diary the determination to resist the Italian forces that wanted to invade Albania and the Greek island of Corfu. Following the Italian annexation of Albania in April, the Greco-Italian relationship deteriorated and the new Italian ambassador sought better diplomatic relationship between Mussolini's government and Metaxas' government, and he arrived in Athens. The tensions mounted after the Italian press published anti-Greek propaganda and provocative acts to Greece that disturbed their relationship. The governor of Italian-controlled Dodecanese closed the communal Greek schools on that island, and Italian troops were singing songs about conquering Aegean Sea, Piraeus and Athens, which was provocative to the Greeks. 4 of the 5 Italian divisions in Albania moved towards the Greek border and prepared for war under the command of the Italian Chief of the General Staff, Marshal Pietro Badoglio. On August 16, 1939, On August 4, 1939, Metaxas ordered a partial mobilization and a state of readiness. Chano even wrote in his diary on May 12, 1939, "The entire road-building program has been directed towards the Greek border, and this is by order of the Duce, who is thinking more and more about invading Greece at the first opportunity." Greece hoped that Mussolini would be neutral in outcoming war with Germany after their invasion of Poland, and UK saw Mussolini alliance with Greece due to Greek resources that would help him. Mussolini even wrote to Metaxas that he would respect Greek neutrality in case of a war and opted to renew the 1928 Treaty of Friendship, but Greece rejected due to the British opposition on this alliance. In May 1940, Italy declared war on the Allies and the Italian press began anti-Greek propaganda, which led to further deterioration of the relationship. After France's fall, who guaranteed Greek independence, Rome got the news that Greece hosted some British ships in their maritime space and even allowed the building of bases like Milos and concluded a trade union with the British Empire, limiting the exports to Germany. Mussolini saw his war for living space as a parallel one. Due to many opposition from the Nazis, Adolf Hitler even stopped his plans to invade Yugoslavia due to the rich Yugoslav resources that Germany could profit from. The Italian forces even violated Greek neutrality by bombing places and launched many provocative actions against the Greeks, sinking the ships. On August 15, 1940, during the national holiday, the Dormition of the Theotokos, the Greek cruiser Ellie was sunk by an Italian submarine, and Ioannis Metaxas knew a war was about to begin begin between the two forces. On 11 August, orchestrated by Chano, the Albanian and Italian press began an anti-Greek propaganda campaign that blamed them for the murder of the bandit Dort Hoxha in June, who was a patriotic warrior that wanted to liberate Cameria. Germany told Mussolini to concentrate on Britain first, and Mussolini postponed the attack on Greece for the end of September and on Yugoslavia in mid-October. On October 7, 1940, Germany invaded Romania to secure the Ploiești oil fields for Operation Barbarossa, and on 13 October Mussolini told the Marshal about the total occupation of Greece. The Italian king, who could stop the war, wanted a fourth crown. After many provocative acts, Benito Mussolini issued an ultimatum to Greece demanding the cession of Greek territory, which the Greek Prime Minister refused, and the war began. For the upcoming war, Italy prepared 87,000 troops, 463 aircrafts and 686 artillery pieces, while Greece had 50,000 troops, 300 aircrafts and 940 artillery pieces. On October 28, 1940, the same day when the ultimatum was issued, the war began between the Greeks and Italians that started with an Italian advance in Epirus. The British RAF bombed the Italian bases. That gave Greece extra time to mobilize and to launch an offensive in Albania, capturing the Klasiura Pass. This was said by many historians to be the first Axis withdrew in the war. In March 1941, the Italians conducted the unsuccessful spring offensive. At the time, the losses were much more costly, and the inferior Greek army, with 300,000 troops at its peak, inflicting victories with the support of the British army. To Adolf Hitler, the British intervention was a threat for him, so he forced Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria and Yugoslavia to join him. Only Romania, Hungary and Bulgaria accepted, and Yugoslavia would rather fight for its country, but it got occupied in less than 2 weeks, which put Greece in trouble. The Germans launched an offensive in North Greece, called Operation Marida. The Greeks deployed a vast number of their men on the battlefield, leaves the Albanian line in a stalemate, deploying 2/3 of its army in Macedonia. The Greeks were overwhelmed by the Germans, so they had to withdraw from Albania to not be cut by the Germans, but they were slowly pushed away by the Italians. With that, the Greeks surrendered to Germans on 20 April and 3 days later to the Italians, leaving the country occupied until 1944, when it was liberated by Britain, influencing them to join NATO during the Cold War. During this war, 100,000 Italians and 80,000 Greeks died. During this war, Hitler had to postpone the invasion of USSR, which could have won them the whole war. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more.